The room was bright with stage lights, and the air buzzed with laughter and applause. Ryan Reynolds, known for his quick humor, leaned casually in his chair on the late-night talk show set. Beside him sat KeanuReeves, quiet, his posture relaxed, yet somehow distant. Ryan grinned, eyes glinting, and with a playful tone said, "You know, Keanu, you've been in so many hit films, and I always picture you sitting alone on a park bench feeding pigeons. What's with that?" The audience burst into laughter. Even the host chuckled, glancing toward Keanu as if expecting him to laugh along. But Keanu didn't. Instead, he smiled softly, a faint crease forming near his eyes. For a moment, he seemed to be somewhere else entirely, as though Ryan's joke had brushed against an old scar. There was a pause. The laughter in the room faded. Slightly, the kind of shift you feel when something serious is about to happen. Keanu took a breath, his voice calm and even. "You know, Ryan," he said slowly, "sometimes the quiet moments are the ones that keep you alive." His words hung in the air like mist. The audience didn't know how to react. Ryan leaned back, his smirk fading into curiosity. Keanu continued, his tone still gentle, but there was weight in it. "People think loneliness is about being alone. It's not. Loneliness is about feeling unseen, even in a crowded room. I've been there. I've sat with people who called themselves friends, and yet my soul felt like it was whispering into an empty canyon. So yes, maybe I do sit on a park bench sometimes. Maybe I do feed pigeons, because in those moments, I'm not pretending to be okay. I'm just breathing." The audience was silent now. No laughter, no coughs. Nothing but the faint hum of the lights above. The host shifted in his chair, clearly unsure how to bridge the moment. But Keanu wasn't done. "I lost people I loved. I lost a future I thought I'd have. I've walked into rooms full of smiles and felt a cold wind blow through me. And here's the thing. We never know what someone's carrying inside. So when we joke about loneliness, we might be laughing at something that's the only thing holding someone together." His voice cracked just slightly on the last words, and that crack made the room feel smaller, more human. Ryan, who moments ago had been the center of laughter, now looked down at his hands. His shoulders had lost their confident tilt. The audience wasn't looking at him anymore. They were looking at Keanu, whose quiet presence was somehow louder than any joke. Keanu glanced toward the crowd, his eyes softer now. "Kindness is free," he said, "but it can save a life. You never know who's starving for it." Someone in the back of the audience sniffled. The camera zoomed in on Keanu's face, capturing the honesty there. Then he leaned back in his chair, giving a small nod, as if the moment had ended. But in truth, it hadn't. The weight of his words lingered, and somewhere in the audience, a young man who had been thinking about giving up that night felt something shift inside. This was not the talk show moment anyone expected, but it was the one they would remember. Asterisk after the show ended, the applause felt different. It wasn't the wild cheer of comedy, it was slower, softer, like people were clapping out of respect instead of habit. Ryan walked off stage first, still processing what had happened. The host followed, glancing back at Keanu as if silently apologizing for letting the joke happen. Keanu stayed seated for a moment after the cameras stopped. Crew members bustled around, clearing the set, but he didn't move. He was looking at the empty audience seats, almost as if he could still see the faces from a few minutes ago. One of the stage assistants approached cautiously. She was young, maybe in her early 20s, and her hands trembled slightly as she held out a folded piece of paper. "Mr. Reeves, someone asked me to give you this before they left." Keanu took it gently, his fingers brushing the worn edges. The handwriting on the outside was small and uneven. He opened it slowly, reading. In silence it said, "You don't know me, but tonight you saved me." No name, no number. Nothing else. Keanu folded the note and slipped it into his jacket pocket. For him, that was enough. He walked toward the backstage exit, the dim hallway lit only by flickering bulbs. As he passed Ryan, who was leaning against the wall with his hands in his pockets, their eyes met. Ryan looked different, less guarded. less sure. "Hey," Ryan said quietly. "I didn't mean anything by it. I was just trying to be funny." Keanu gave a small smile. "I know, and you are funny. But sometimes the thing we think is light can feel heavy for someone else." Ryan nodded, not defensive this time. "You're right. I guess I forgot that for a second." Keanu placed a hand on his shoulder. "We all forget. The important thing is to remember again." They parted ways outside. The night air was cold, the city alive with noise. Keanu stood there for a moment, looking at the streetlights glowing against the dark sky. He decided to walk instead of taking a car. He passed by a diner, the kind with neon lights and cracked vinyl booths. Through the window, he saw a man in a faded coat counting change on the table. His face tired, Keanu stepped inside. The smell of coffee and fried food wrapped around him. He ordered 2 hot meals, paid quietly, and carried one over to the man's table. "Mind if I sit?" Keanu asked. The man looked up, confused, then nodded. "Sure." Keanu slid the plate across to him. "Thought you could use this?" For a long moment, the man didn't speak. Then in a shaky voice he said, "Nobody's done something like this for me in years." Keanu smiled faintly. "Then tonight's a good night to start again." Ate together in silence, but it wasn't a lonely silence. It was the kind that felt like a shelter in the middle of a storm. Outside, the city kept moving. But at that small table, time slowed down just enough for 2 strangers to feel seen. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the blinds of Keanu's small apartment. It wasn't the kind of place most would expect a Hollywood star to live. And no grand view of the ocean, no golden chandeliers, just a simple space with worn furniture. Stacks of books and a single plant by the window. Keanu sat at the table with a mug of coffee, staring at the folded note from last night. "You don't know me, but tonight you saved me." Those words replayed in his mind like a whisper that wouldn't fade. He had met thousands of fans in his life, heard countless stories, but this one felt different. There was something about the anonymity of it. No name, no face, just the raw truth of someone reaching out in silence. He decided he needed to walk. When his mind was tangled, he always turned to the streets, blending into the rhythm of the city around midday. He found himself outside a small bookstore tucked between 2 tall buildings. The kind of place you could miss if you blinked while walking past. A bell chimed softly when he pushed open the door. Inside, the scent of old paper filled the air. Behind the counter sat an elderly woman with silver hair tied into a neat bun. She looked up and gave him a warm smile. "Good afternoon," she said. "Looking for something special?" "Maybe," Keanu replied. "Or maybe I'm just looking." He wandered through the narrow aisles, running his fingers over the spines of books. He stopped when one caught his eye, small, weathered volume, titled Letters Never Sent, flipping it open. He saw page after page of handwritten letters that had never reached their intended recipients. Confessions, apologies, expressions of love, cries for help, all captured in ink but never delivered. Something about it hit him deeply. He brought the book to the counter. The woman rang it up, then paused. "You know, that book has a strange history. It's been in my store for years. People pick it up, read a page, and cry. But no one's ever bought it. Until now." Keanu gave a quiet smile. "Maybe it was waiting for me." As he stepped outside, the city air felt heavier. He thought again about the note from the night before. What if the person who wrote it was like one of the voices in this book? What if they had been carrying something for years, unseen and unheard? He knew then he couldn't just let that note be a mystery. He needed to find them, not out of curiosity, because maybe they still needed saving. But as the day went on, Keanu didn't realize that the person who had written the note was already closer to him than he could have imagined. Closer than the streets, closer than the crowd watching him quietly, waiting for the right moment to step forward. That evening, the city was wrapped in the kind of rain that seemed to wash away all sound except the steady tapping against windows and sidewalks. Keanu sat by the window of his apartment, the dim glow of a single lamp casting long shadows across the room. The note from the talk show lay open on the table beside the book he'd bought earlier. Letters never sent. He had read half the book already, and each letter felt like a conversation with a stranger's soul. He kept wondering if the writer of the note had felt the same way, trapped between wanting to speak and fearing to be heard. Around 9, his phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. "Hi, you don't know me, is it?" Chest tightened. He typed back slowly. "Are you the one who gave me the note?" There was a pause. Then, "Yes. I didn't think you'd want to know who I am. I just wanted you to understand that what you said, it's mattered." He took a deep breath. Before replying, "It mattered to me too. Will you meet me?" "Somewhere public. No pressure." Another long pause, then, "Okay. There's a coffee shop on 9th and Maple. Tomorrow at 5. The next day, Keanu arrived 10 minutes early. The shop was quiet, with soft music playing and the smell of cinnamon drifting through the air. Rain streaked the windows, turning the streetlights outside into blurred halos. He chose a table in the corner, ordered 2 cups of tea, and waited. Every time the door opened, his eyes flicked up. Finally, a young woman stepped inside. She was in her mid-20s, wearing an oversized sweater and carrying a small bag clutched tightly to her chest. Her hair was damp from the rain. She scanned the room until her eyes met his, and for a moment she froze. Keanu stood, offering a gentle smile. "You must be," she said softly. They sat down. She glanced at the tea, then at him. "I almost didn't come. I'm not." "Good." At this, "Neither am I," he admitted, and that seemed to ease her a little. She took a sip before speaking. "I've been invisible most of my life. People pass by me like I'm part of the background. Last year, I lost someone. My brother. He was the only person who ever really saw me. Since then, I've been disappearing, even from myself." Voice trembled, but she kept going. "That night at the show, when Ryan made the joke and everyone laughed, I felt that sting. I've had people laugh at my pain before. But when you answered him, it was like you were talking to me. Like you knew what it felt like to be unseen." Keanu listened, his eyes never leaving hers. "Because I do," he said quietly. "And because you're not invisible. Not here. Not now." Mia's eyes glistened. She reached into her bag and pulled out another folded paper. "I wrote this the night my brother died. I never showed it to anyone, but I think you should have it." Took it carefully, his fingers brushing hers. "But before he could open it," she said, "Not now. Read it when you're alone." They sat there for another hour, talking about books, music, and the quiet ways people survive when the world feels too loud. When they finally stepped outside, the rain had stopped, but the streets still shone under the glow of the lamps. Keanu didn't know it yet, but the letter she had given him would not only explain her pain, it would lead him straight into a decision that would change both their lives. Asterisk that night. Keanu sat at his kitchen table with the unopened letter from Mia resting in front of him. The room was quiet, except for the low hum of the refrigerator. The street outside was still wet from the rain, and the reflection of passing headlights flickered on his walls. He turned the envelope over in his hands for a long moment before finally sliding a finger under the flap. The paper inside was slightly crumpled, as if it had been folded and unfolded many times. The letter was written in small, neat handwriting, but the words carried a heavy weight. "Dear Liam," it began. "I don't know if you can hear me wherever you are, but I need to say this. I don't understand why you had to go. I don't understand why I'm still here when you were the better one, the kinder one. Every day feels like walking through fog. Sometimes I think about just stopping, not walking anymore, not breathing. But I keep going because a part of me hopes I'll find you again. Until then, I'll sit on our bench and feed the pigeons, like you taught me. Like you said, peace could be found there." The rest of the letter was raw and unfiltered memories of her brother, regrets about arguments they had, the guilt of surviving. Keanu's eyes lingered on one sentence near the end. "If anyone ever reads this, I hope they remind me that I still matter." He set the paper down slowly. Leaning back in his chair, mornings in his life usually began with solitude. but the next day he walked to Ninth and Maple again, not to the coffee shop, but to the park across the street. He scanned the benches until he saw Hermio sitting with a small paper bag in her hands, scattering crumbs for the pigeons. He approached quietly, taking a seat beside her without saying a word. For a few minutes, they just sat, the sound of wings and distant traffic filling the silence. "I read it," he said finally. Her shoulders tensed. And it made me think about how many people carry letters like that inside them. Words they've never shared because they're afraid no one will listen but you. You trusted me with yours. That means something. She looked down, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't trust you because you're famous. I trusted you because you spoke like someone who's been in the dark too. Keanu nodded slowly. I have. And I know that when you're in that place, it can feel like there's no way out. But there is. Sometimes the way out isn't a door, it's a person. She glanced at him, her eyes glassy. And what if that person leaves? Then you find another, he said gently. And another, till one stays. They sat in silence. Again, but this time it was a silence that felt steady, not fragile. After a while, Keanu pulled out his phone. There's something I've been thinking about, a project. It might sound strange, but what if we created a place for people to send their letters never sent? A space where they can share them anonymously but still be heard. Mia blinked at him. You mean, like a real thing? Yes, he said. Because maybe someone will read one of those letters at the exact moment they need it. Like I read yours. Her lips curved into the smallest smile she'd worn since they met. I think he would have liked that. My brother. Neither of them knew it yet, but that idea would grow into something far larger than either had imagined, and it would pull them into a wave of attention and danger that neither had asked for. Asterisk, 2 weeks later. The project was no longer just an idea. With Keanu's quiet persistence and Mia's determination, they had created an online platform called Letters Never Sent. It was simple. Anyone could submit a letter anonymously, and anyone could read them. There were no likes, no comments, no shares, just words and eyes to receive them. The first day, only 3 letters came in. By the end of the first week, there were hundreds. People wrote to lost loves, to parents they could never forgive, to friends they never got to say goodbye to. Each letter carried a different kind of pain, but together, they formed a strange and beautiful community of honesty. The media caught wind of it. Headlines read, KeanuReeves launches anonymous letter project to help people feel seen. Interviews were requested, but Keanu declined most of them. This isn't about me, he told Mia. It's about them. But as the attention grew, so did the risks. One night, Mia received an email from someone claiming to know her personally. Wasn't kind. It was filled with cruel reminders of her past, accusations, and threats to expose her for things that weren't even true. She froze, staring at the screen, the weight of old fears pressing down on her chest. Keanu found her at the coffee shop the next morning, her hands shaking around a cup she hadn't touched. She told him about the message. He listened without interrupting, then said quietly, "You're not going to face this alone." They traced the email to a small account that had been sending similar messages to other contributors. It was someone who believed people should deal with their own problems in silence and saw the platform as weakness. Keanu wanted to ignore it, but Mia refused. If we stay quiet, they win. They'll scare others into silence too. So they made a choice. Instead of hiding the attack, they posted the email on the site without naming the sender and wrote a response together. To those who think sharing pain is weakness, every word spoken in truth is an act of strength. You cannot shame someone for surviving. The post went viral. Thousands of new letters poured in over the next few days. People were no longer just writing their own stories. They were writing to each other, leaving messages of hope and encouragement. One afternoon, as they sat on their usual park bench feeding pigeons, Mia turned to Keanu. You know, when I gave you that first note, I thought it was just for me. But it wasn't. It was for all of this. Keanu smiled faintly. And all of this started because you were brave enough to let someone see you. She looked out at the pigeons, the sky soft with the gold of early evening. I don't feel invisible anymore, he nodded. Good, 'cause you're not. A family walked by, their little boy laughing as he chased a bird across the path. Mia watched them for a moment before turning back to Keanu. Can really keep this going? As long as there's someone out there with a letter they're afraid to send, he said, we'll be here. And for the first time in years, she believed it. The bench, the pigeons, the quiet between them, these were no longer symbols of loneliness. They were the proof that even in the deepest silence, there is a way to be heard.